whenever run into a spiritual crisis, my way of dealing with it is to go out and buy another spiritual book, and which I don't read. But next time I run into another spiritual mud bath, I go out and buy another book. In fact, I buy several at one time. So, which gives you a clue to the nature of the mind, as you know. It's all about the self. I'm talking about the egoic mind. And so that egoic mind has no idea what the possible human is. Or at least it thinks that the possible human is just the wanting something. Now, in this culture, we've made that into an ideology. We made that into a science. We made it into a philosophy of life. So that the North American belief, or the belief of any materialistic society, but particularly capitalist society, is that the nature of the human being is to be selfish, to be acquisitive, to be aggressive, and to be competitive. And this is who we actually are. And you know what? Scientists will actually find for you the selfish gene. There's even a book written with that title. No, that's not science, it's ideology. But it's an emanation of that egoic mind, the same egoic mind that sits there saying, when is it going to be my turn? I could complain. Why can't I have that experience that other people have had of the being and the presence and the stillness and the unity and all the beauty? Or actually, I could actually notice that I've never stayed still long enough for that to happen. I've not trained my mind in that particular way. And that's, of course, I'm so excited to working with Sadhguru in his course, because I can see right away that it'll get me out of my mind. Out of your mind is supposed to be a bad thing. What are you, out of your mind? Thank God I'm out of my mind, finally, you know. And so, I do get that it's not about what anybody else will teach me. And it's not about what I'm going to teach you either. So when it comes to addictions, or any other problem we're facing, it doesn't do to look for the solutions on the outside. That's a clue. It doesn't look for the solutions from the outside. There are no solutions from the outside. There are no solutions from the outside. The medical profession exemplifies that to the nth degree. Because what we basically do as physicians is we take addicted people or depressed people or anxious people, and not for a moment do we believe that they have the truth within themselves. Not for a moment do we believe that the healing power resides in us all. Not for a moment do we have any idea how to encourage, invigorate, and empower that healing capacity that we all have. What we do instead is we replace one pharmaceutical with another. For your depression, here's the pill. Now, and I'm not even saying that I'm against pills for depression. I've taken them myself and they really helped me. But they're never the solution. They're not the answer. At the very best, they buy you some time. But then we stop there. We think this is it. The solution is, you have a problem, here's something from the outside, take this, and then you'll be okay. The kind of getting into your body that Sadhguru was initiating here, and the kind of looking at the nature of our mind that I'm encouraging in this conversation never occurs to the mainstream healing profession in this country or in this Western world, which is why we're so far away from understanding or being able to solve any problem at all. Now, the first thing we have to understand is that when we have a difficulty, any kind of difficulty at all, there's two ways to approach it. So you can say, I have a problem with addiction, or my son or daughter has a problem with addiction. And how do I get rid of this problem? But as the spiritual teacher Almas points out, he says, all the difficulties you experience, all the problems you have, exists quite simply because you don't want to grow up. On some level, we don't want to take responsibility. So the question is how to take responsibility. And furthermore, he says that the reality is that every problem that we have can be looked at two ways. We can look at it as a difficulty to get rid of, or we can look at it as a message from our true selves. We can look at it as something to overcome and get through, or we can see it as a possibility of learning. And he says that all the difficulties that we have are actually designed for us by a part of ourselves that loves us so much that it'll create extra difficulties for us if we don't get the message. What else can it do? So that I've actually had people with cancer come and say to me, you know what, this cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've had people who've overcome addictions say to me, the addiction which gave me HIV is the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, what on earth are people talking about? And I don't say that I recommend those ways of learning. But what they are saying is that those difficulties woke them up to the necessity of getting to know themselves. That the cancer woke them up to the necessity of getting to know themselves and to accept themselves, and yes, to love themselves. And but for those experiences, they were too stubborn to learn. They were just going to stumble along life, living an alienated existence, and they were never going to wake up to who they really were. So what Amos is saying is that any problem comes along not in order to make our lives miserable, but actually in order to make our life less miserable. And the suffering that it imposes is an attempt to wake us up. And if we wake up, we'll have a reason to be grateful. Again, I'm not saying that I recommend either cancer or addictions as a way of learning, but what I am recommending is that if they do come along, or if anything comes along, we take it as an opportunity to learn. We take it as a God-given gift that is here to wake us up. And unfortunately, many of us need many wake-up calls, and I'm not somebody who's very quick to learn. It takes a long time to wake me up, and even after I wake up for a while, my tendency is very much to go back to sleep. But remember, the question is the possible human? Well, what I'm saying here is that the very possibility of being human is inherent in dealing honestly and openly with our difficulties. That's what makes us human. That dealing honestly and openly and courageously with our difficulties is exactly what makes us human. Now, the possible human, I was going to bring you a quote, but I left it at home, but I'll tell you about it. I recently read a book by a Canadian, American-Canadian academic called Mark Lewis, and it's called Memoirs of an Addicted Brain. Really a wonderful read. And he himself is a neuroscientist who goes through his own addictions, and he gets addicted to everything, like starts from pot to alcohol to heroin to ecstasy or other substances like that, ketamine, what have you. So he goes through the whole gamut of addictions. And he talks about the physiology of the addicted brain as well. Now, at a certain point, he's in Malaysia, and he's tramping through the jungle with some fellow scientists. In a clearing, they find these two people, a father and son, this tribe, this jungle tribe, and these two people are standing there. And I wish I could have read to you the eloquent description of these two human beings. But the fundamental sense of it is that they are two real people, absolutely grounded in themselves, comfortable with who they are, confident about who they are, not at all egotistical, neither afraid nor aggressive, and they feel safe and very much rooted in their world. It's a beautiful description. And of course, Lewis contrasts the confidence and stillness and presence of these two people with his own neurotic, troubled, uncomfortable in his own skin consciousness. And he says it's possible to be like that the very possibility of being like that excited him. So when we talk about the possible human, we're not just talking about some faraway ideal that maybe will exist at some point in the future. And there's a kind of an idea these days that we're evolving to something higher. I don't go along with that. That something higher has already existed and still exists in a very few rare places in the world where so-called civilization hasn't intruded. It's not that we have to evolve into something higher. It's that we have to shed the mental and spiritual pollution that so-called civilization has instilled in our minds and in our souls and in our personalities. And that's not a personal problem. It's not a problem with me in this individual. It's not my failure. It's not your failure. If you're not comfortable in your skin, if you're not as grounded, present, still, confident, self-regarding in a positive sense, individual, that's not your personal failure. This is the culture that we live in. But that possibility is inside all of us. That's our true nature. That's actually who we are. So we're not talking about some future evolution. We're talking about what's here right now.